At 11:20 a.m., on a December afternoon, 7 desperate men seized a moment when a maximum security prison let its guard down. Routine had become weakness. Civility became complacency. Within minutes, they had disarmed their keepers, stripped them of their uniforms, and walked out the back gate armed with more than 16 stolen weapons and a state pickup truck. On a table inside, they left behind just one line, a chilling warning and a promise. You haven't heard the last of us yet.
What began as the most calculated prison break in Texas history would soon erupt into gunfire, bloodshed, and the largest manhunt the state had faced since the days of Bonnie and Clyde.
Stick with us as we uncover the fugitives who defied the odds, the largest manhunt Texas had seen in half a century, and the unraveling of the Texas 7. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Every chase has a different perspective. To understand how a plan like this succeeded, you must meet the 7. George Rivas, the reported ringleader, Michael Rodriguez, Joseph Garcia, Donald Newberry, Patrick Murphy, Larry Harper, and Randy Halpern. Each man carried a separate past of violent crimes, long sentences, and reasons they said they could not bear prison any longer. The Connally Unit, a maximum security prison in South Texas, had been operating work details with outside supervisors and civilian contractors. It was a routine that provided the 7 the window they needed, but one man's leadership would turn a breakout into a cascade of choices none of them could undo. On December 13th, year 2000, the escape unfolded like clockwork. They waited until civilian workers and many staff left for lunch. When a supervisor bent to inspect equipment, he was struck. One by one, staff were subdued. The inmates took uniforms, weapons in the armory, 14 pistols, a shotgun, an AR-15, hundreds of rounds, and drove away in a state pickup. They left a note. They drove into the afternoon and into the unknown. As they fled, they made choices that would not only attract the attention of law enforcement, but create victims that could not be undone. The escapees needed cash and supplies. In the days that followed, they robbed a Radio Shack for cash and police scanners, then planned a larger job for Christmas Eve. On December 24th, 2000, the group carried out a robbery at an Oshman sporting goods store in Irving, intended as a quick strike. Instead, it turned into the moment that would seal their fate, because when a responding officer arrived, everything devolved into gunfire. Officer Aubrey Hawkins arrived on the scene within minutes of a 911 call. What followed was a fusillade. Multiple inmates opened fire, and Hawkins was hit nearly a dozen times. He died that night. His death shocked local and national audiences. It changed the hunt from an escapee search to a manhunt for cop killers. By Christmas night, law enforcement had transformed into a nationwide dragnet. The manhunt intensified. America's most wanted broadcast photos and details, and tips poured in. Within weeks, police were closing in. Between January 22nd and January 24th, 2001, a month and some days after breakout, 6 of the 7 were captured after tips and sightings led police to locations in Colorado and elsewhere. One of the 7, Larry Harper, took his own life during an arrest attempt. With arrests made, the legal chapter began. But justice would take years, and not all cases would end the same way. All surviving members were indicted for Hawkins' murder. Trials stretched across years. Some defendants sought to plead or forego appeals. Several were sentenced to death. Over time, George Rivas, Michael Rodriguez, Donald Newberry, and Joseph Garcia were executed. Randy Halpern and Patrick Murphy have remained on death row and have filed appeals and legal challenges, including claims of judicial bias in Halpern's original trial that had prompted renewed court scrutiny. But the courtroom wins and losses could not bring Hawkins back, and the families on all sides were left with wounds that survived verdicts. This is where the story must pause and look up from the facts. We have followed an escape, a sequence of crimes, and the machinery of justice. But the human cost is not a bullet point. Officer Hawkins left family, a community, and colleagues who remember his name and his last call to duty. The men who escaped carried histories that include abuse, violence, and failure of systems meant to rehabilitate. The families of victims and offenders now share, in different ways, grief, guilt, and the long ache of permanence. This case forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. How does society balance accountability with the possibility of redemption? How do prisons and the civilians who work with them manage risk? How do we prevent tragedies where institutional routines become vulnerabilities? The Texas 7 is not only a story about escape. It is a mirror that reflects how policy, poverty, and violence intersect in human lives. The answers are messy. They are legal and political, but they are also moral, and often they are painfully personal. The Texas 7 began as fugitives, believing freedom was worth any cost, but the final cost was their own lives. Their story reminds us of the ripple effect of crime, the families shattered, the communities shaken, the questions left behind. At Mysterious Crime Box, we tell these stories not to sensationalize, but to remember, to reflect, and to learn. If you believe in shining light on the darkest corners of our shared history, subscribe, share, and leave your thoughts below. Join us again here at the Mysterious Crime Box for more mysteries await inside the crime box.